And good morning. My name is Tom Schneider. I'm with NinjaTrader. Welcome to Benefits of Futures. It's our inaugural show, the show where we co-host with Anthony Crudele to talk about how futures can benefit your trading, whether you're using them or not, in different ways. So before we get into it, before we get into today's topic, I'd like to just remind everybody that futures and options trading contains substantial risk. It's not for everyone. An investor could potentially lose all or more than their initial investment. So we want to be very careful. We want to use risk capital. Risk capital is something that's defined as basically capital you can afford to lose. Doesn't affect your situation, your retirement horizon. So we want to use that. Just want to let you know that past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Everything we talk about here is not intended to be, nor should be taken as trade recommendations or investment advice. And everything we are doing here is for educational purposes only. With that being said, I'd like to welcome on our inaugural show, Anthony Crudele. Welcome, Anthony.
Jason, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me here today.
No problem, no problem. So, to start the first show of Benefits of Futures, I think you've picked a really interesting topic, how NFTs and ETH futures or Ethereum futures, how they relate and how you can use Ethereum futures not only to hedge or insure against your NFT position, but also your Ethereum position. So, can you, before we get into that, I just want to know, where are you? Where are you right now?
I'm in Naples, Florida.
Naples, Florida. Beautiful Naples. Sunny today, or?
It's sunny
every day.
Yeah. We're in the summer months now, where if anybody that's from Florida knows, we're going to get the rain pretty much every day between 2 and 3 Eastern. So try to trade early, get my golf in, and then, before the rain comes every day.
Sounds like a plan. That's great. So let's just get right into it. Can you explain NFTs for me?
So I want to talk about, first of all, why I started to really use ETH futures. And why I even started to get into NFTs. So first of all, an NFT is a non-fungible token. I really look at it as a digital receipt for something on the chain. And I remember when NFTs first came out, and I know like many of you out there are probably listening to this, you probably have not bought an NFT or traded them, but some of you definitely have. And I was one of these people who was kind of like, I don't know what this is going to be. Is this going to be like the next Pokemon kind of thing? Or is this something really interesting? And my experience was I actually started to buy NFTs probably almost a year ago. And I started to buy them in Z.Run. Some people may or may not know what that is. But what Z.Run is and how I got interested in the NFTs was it's a digital horse racing game. So I bought some horses that I had to use Ethereum to buy, and you would race in the Z.Run ecosystem for crypto, or you could breed your horses. And I had a male like Z1 horse, and that's just a generation of it. And people would pay to breed with my horse, and I would get that back in ETH. So it was really interesting because I realized that this NFTs is not just about buying the pictures. Here most people have been to OpenSea's website before and have seen the rankings. If you haven't, that's where really the top NFTs are. And so for me as a trader, I looked at the NFTs and said, if I'm getting interested in this and getting involved in this, I don't know how much liquidity there's going to be to get out of something like this. So when I bought the NFT, my first thought process was, well, how do I protect myself if this thing just falls to go to zero? Because let's face it, we've seen some things happen in the crypto world where that could definitely happen. And so Ethereum futures was what I looked at as really the only way to really protect my investment, to hedge it. So as I got involved in the NFTs, it actually brought me to look at the futures really differently than I have in the past. And I know futures markets originally were created really for people to hedge, crops and things like that, commodities, right? And I think that the launch of Ethereum and Bitcoin futures are really serving a purpose beyond just people trading these products. You actually have the ability to hedge your Ethereum if you own your spot Ethereum, or to hedge your NFTs by using futures, because it's the only place where you can go and get short something. And so you're able to actually use the futures to hedge against either the value of the NFT that you have, which I'll explain a little bit more in detail as we go along, or to hedge your spot Ethereum. So in a long way around it, this is how I got involved in NFTs, and just going to show you guys today why I think Ethereum futures, if you're involved in NFTs or in crypto in general, I think are very important.
Right. And, to your point of the NFTs that you invested in, or you purchased, you bought into, is one very specific use of that technology, right? So it's a digital technology. All the information that's contained in that horse race, so to speak, or the horses that you breed or that you race, that's all contained on the blockchain, which is a public record. And it is something that says that this horse belongs to Anthony. And it doesn't mean Anthony, nobody has to know your name, but you are the only one that has the ability to change the owner of that horse. And this expands into other uses for NFTs. It's been used in the art world, the hobby world. And I think we're seeing really the beginning of the NFT market. You got into it about a year ago. So did I. I got into it for hobby reasons, for sports. I'm a big sports fan. And so Topps came out with some NFTs. There are some other companies that put out sports NFTs. And one of the things that I think we don't understand fully, living where we do, is we have a lot of space. We have a lot of space in our houses, our apartments, where we live. But there are parts of the world where there isn't a lot of space to handle or to hold a hobby that you might like. So you might want to own or participate in some sort of sports card collection or comic collection or art collection, even fine art collections. You just don't have the space to display or store it. This is a digital way to participate. So I think one of the reasons that the NFT market is still in its infancy is I think that's where the way the world is going. And I think what's really interesting is how you put those two markets together, the NFT market, as well as how does that relate to Ethereum?
Yeah, I mean, just even look at Tom Brady. I'm a huge fan of his. He's doing NFTs now on signatures. I believe Tiger Woods is also doing this. And it's just a digital receipt. That's just the way I look at it. And I was by far one of the most skeptical people about this when it first came out there. And the way I look at any investment or anything that I do, and I think with NFTs, there's going to be all sorts of different ways to approach this, right? You could do it as a hobby, and maybe you just want to own something digitally for it. And some people may say that's crazy. Well, that's not your hobby. So, it's going to be very personal in the way you look at things. Or you could do it kind of the way that I did on the gaming side. And I think there's just going to be so many other new and different ways that NFTs are going to be used. I mean, I even know for my own personal, I'm actually going to be hosting an event here in Florida. And one of the ways that we were discussing getting your ticket or your entry was to sell NFTs, and that was the way you were actually going to show that you're in. And actually, everyone's going to get their own unique kind of like trading picture or something like that. We're still kind of thinking about that to be able to come in and access it, but you had to buy it on the blockchain, and that was the only way you could have your ticket. So NFTs could be used in all sorts of different ways. And one of the main things I want to talk about today, as we talk about the benefits of futures, is you're buying. Pretty much all of the NFTs are in Ethereum. You could use Sol as well, but pretty much everything is done in ETH. And maybe I do a little bit of a screen share here just to kind of like get into it here a little bit and show everybody some reasons why I think that futures are so beneficial. This is benefits of futures to this type of, to what we're talking about today with NFTs and also spot Ethereum. And I don't know if everybody could see my screen just yet, but where I'm at right now is I'm at the homepage of OpenSea. And just to give you a quick, kind of idea, if you haven't been here yet, this is where the top NFTs are ranked on OpenSea. And OpenSea is really pretty much the number one place where people are going to trade their NFTs. And you can see that on here. And as you can see, that little almost diamond type thing, you can see I highlighted it right there, is ETH. And pretty much all of them are in ETH. And like I said, Sol is this tripping ape tribe, but almost all of them are in ETH or in Sol. There's no Sol futures at this point, but at some point, maybe who knows in the future that could be the case. And I should quickly kind of go over what Ethereum is as well. And I'm just going to pull up here on Investopedia, and I highly recommend everybody just go and Google this stuff if you're not familiar what Ethereum is. Really, there's Ethereum and Bitcoin are the two most popular when it comes to crypto, and I'm by no stretch a crypto expert. I'm just a trader or an investor in this type of stuff. And just so you know, like Ethereum is really like where the smart contracts comes in, and where people are actually building on Ethereum. So I'm actually somebody who holds Ethereum. I think it's something that I've owned for a period of time, and I'll continue to own. Versus I'm more of an Ethereum guy than a Bitcoin guy. But once again, how do I protect myself in holding these types of things? Because as you can see, even today, over the last 24 hours, actually a good day to talk about it. Ethereum's taken quite a dive lower, and it's been going lower for a period of time now. And I own a bunch of spot ETH. I don't have any more NFTs at this point. I have sold all of them, but I will buy them again at some point. But I want to talk about how you could actually hedge using futures. Like I said, originally futures were created for people to be able to hedge their spot or cash or spot positions in any sort of commodity or anything, right? That's what futures were originally intended to do. And the launch of these crypto futures, I know that most traders are going to look at them just as trading entities, but they're really going to be used, I think, where it really gets very interesting is being able to hedge against a spot position. And CME Group offers two different types of futures right now for Ether. There's the Ether contract, which you'll just see will just be the ETH symbol on your platform. And one contract is going to be 50 ETH. That's a pretty sizable position, so it's a pretty big contract. It moves in 50-cent increments, and it's $25 per tick. Okay, so it's a pretty big contract. So if you had one of these big NFTs, let's just say you paid 50 ETH for it just to make it easy versus one contract. Let's just say the price of that NFT doesn't move at all, right? Let's just say you paid 50 ETH for it, and the price of that NFT has not changed in value at all. And what if the price of ETH goes down? Well, you could use ETH futures to sell one, and you'd be hedged against that position. So if the value of ETH goes down, the value of your NFT goes down. So it's just, I'm going to get to the chart and I'll explain a little bit more, I think, in strategy of how I would look at that. But it's important to know that. So you're not just standing there holding something that's decreasing in value and you have no way to hedge against it. Then you have the micro Ether futures, which is 1/10 of one ETH. So it's not 1/10 of one of the Ether futures contracts. It's actually 1/10 of one ETH. So right now I think ETH is around 1850, right? So it's 1/10 of that. Okay. And that moves in the same increments of 50 cents. And that's only going to be, as you can see, 5 cents per contract, because it's actually 1/10 of the actual spot value of ETH. So you have two options to precisely hedge your NFTs. So let's just say that you had an NFT that you paid 1 ETH for, right? If you had an NFT that you paid 1 ETH for, you might say, well, you know what? I don't want to hedge that full contract. I can sell 5 micro ETH, and you'd be hedging 50% of that contract. Actually, I'll go to a chart, I think, maybe to make this a little bit more clear. Let me pull up NinjaTrader here on the charts and go over some of the things that I look at. Now, what I have up here now is I have actually just the ETH spot chart here on Ninja. And what I have pulled up is just simply a 20-day moving average. And for me, because I hold spot ETH, I've actually had stakes in ETH. I've had NFTs. Something I watch just to keep this really simple are just moving averages. And I pulled up the 20-day moving average because as of really the last month or so, it's failed to stay above it, as you can see right here. So someone who holds ETH, I have been very cautious about adding to my core spot ETH position because we're failing to hold it. So what I've been doing is I've been using futures to short against my spot ETH. Now, I'm not actually net short ETH. I'm actually just hedging my spot. And I've been using micro ETH futures for that. And that's going to be symbol MET. And you can, like I said, you can pull that up here on NinjaTrader. I've now moved over to the micro ETH to be able to show you this, just to understand that if you own any of these spot Ethereum or Bitcoin, because obviously there's Bitcoin futures as well, this futures is the only way that I know of to protect myself from this thing going all the way down, right? I know I want to own ETH for the bigger picture. I don't want to be trading in and out of it because I think the fees are just too high. And I want to be someone who's accumulating ETH and for an overall position in my portfolio. But the only way that I protect my portfolio, because I'm not a hodler, holding on for dear life, if you don't know what that means, some of these people that just buy crypto and just never cover them. That's not who I am. I'm somebody who wants to manage my portfolio. So what I do is I go to the ETH futures or the micro ETH futures, and I will get short and I will trade against a moving average or whatever sort of strategy you would choose to use. It's entirely up to you to sell against it. So I can precisely hedge it. So really, as the price of ETH is going down, I'm actually gaining by making money by being short ETH on the futures. I'm losing on the spot. But then at some point when I cover my ETH futures, let's just say we're to go back above the 20-day moving average or something were to trigger, I would then take the profit from my shorts off. Hopefully there's a profit. If there wasn't, I still would have made money on the spot ETH. So I use that and I rotate that money in and out of being able to add to my ETH position without really changing my overall net portfolio value. Does that make sense, Tom? So to understand that I don't want to be just sitting there holding something and hope that it goes up. Futures is the only way. This is the massive benefit of the futures markets. Why they originally were created is to hedge against portfolio risk. So that's why I like to use these ETH futures.
So Anthony, that makes very good sense. Using the moving average as a guide and looking at how in the past month or so it's been holding as resistance. But looking back to March, when you saw that break above the moving average and you saw that trend continued, are you doing the opposite with the futures? So you've got a long position. Are you adding to the position with the futures as we break above the moving average, or is it only because you're long in the Ethereum itself that when the market is going against that position, you're hedging?
So the beginning of the year for me, and this is really the whole year in ETH, and actually I'm going to go to the spot because I'm going to use the spot here to show what the year looks like. And I should say that even though I'm going to use the futures have expirations. So you're going to see price differences between spot and futures, okay? Futures are going to expire. They are financially settled at CME Group. So if you own a future, at some point that future is going to expire and you're going to get the financial settlement on that. Because of that, I like to chart using the spot because the spot doesn't expire. So I will look at the spot chart to make my decisions and I'll go to the futures to then execute. So the spot will dictate my futures execution. And when you go back here, I was actually starting, I actually do a show every week on YouTube called Develop Your Edge. And I use my NinjaTrader charts on there. And I talked about how I thought that ETH could start to rally here. And I actually added to my ETH spot position. So the question was, what did I do back here? Well, in the beginning part of the year, I was short some ETH futures. When we started to get into February and March, I realized it was becoming too active for me chopping around. So I just got flat the futures and just at that point, I'll a lot of times just hold my spot. Here, I actually added to my spot. So when we started to fail back towards the end of April and beginning of May, I started to have to get into the futures markets to hedge myself. So I'm not super active with trying to hedge a position because I look at it like this, is that I overall want to be long the product. So I am trying I'm almost putting myself in a position where I have to be forced to use the futures. For this particular instance, I won't use the futures for these examples to be long it, which you easily can because it's a leverage product, which is great. And if you have a futures account and you don't have a crypto account, you have access to trading crypto as well. A lot of what I do in my trading is I use it on the spot for the long, the futures for the short. Unless I see an opportunity for a quick trade that I want leverage, then I'll use the futures for a day trade. But in terms of accumulation, because the spot doesn't expire, I don't use the futures for that. I use the futures to hedge my bigger core position. But you definitely, at times, I will use the futures just for a day trade. Like if all of a sudden I see that the market's spiking or it gets above the 20-day and I look at it and say, I think this thing could rally today or have a big move. A lot of correlation we've been seeing lately, not as of real late with equities, but there's times where I might use the futures for that.
Great. No, that's great information. So in your experience, are you looking at any other markets besides the spot Ethereum, the obviously NFT? We can't do this, but do you use any other markets as guidance? Do you see any correlation with ETH futures and say any kind of other currencies, the indices, or are you just looking at this completely for your ETH spot position and trading the futures that way?
I really like that question because I think that so many people look at these markets and they look for correlations. I think that, for example, a lot of people will say, look at gold as a hedge during times of inflation, or people are talking about crypto as a hedge during times of inflation. I look at every single market that I trade as an independent market because I have learned in my experiences, even when I see correlations, a lot of times these correlations tend to really fool me into believing something that is correlating or happening that maybe, as I talked about, I use the gold example because so many people relate to that and say, you always should own some gold in your portfolio to hedge against inflation. How's that worked out so far this year, right? How's that worked out really in general? I know some people will say, well, gold is up X amount of this or Bitcoin really is doing that. And that's fine, but I don't own or trade anything because of those reasons. Because for me, I like Ethereum. The way I look at Ethereum and the reason why I buy Ethereum is because I believe that Ethereum is where the future of crypto will continue to build and grow on. It has some use case. I am not somebody, I'm not a big Bitcoin person. I did own Bitcoin at some point. I don't own it anymore. I look at Bitcoin and say, what do you do with it when you have it? I've owned ETH. I've used ETH in so many different ways, from the NFTs and all sorts of different ways, that I'm like, I actually use this as a currency, right? So I look at ETH very independent of what it is, and I just really only look at the price action of it. And so what I try to do is when I see weakness, I try to add to a core position. I'll look at my bigger picture stuff, and I'll use the futures to actually hopefully make some money on that. So I'm using the income from the futures to add to a core spot position. So it's generated by me managing the portfolio well. Some people, the only way that they grow their crypto position is by adding more of the money that they've made or in their trading or other places to buy more of that. So that's how they get a bigger position. I keep it very centered just on Ethereum. So if my Ethereum spot, whatever I own at this point, the only way I'm accumulating more is the money that I'm making by rotating it using the futures. Does that make sense? So this way I am growing it from within and managing that aspect of my portfolio solely on the ETH.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, looking at this chart, looking at this is the spot future, the spot ETH, not the future. It looks like the last 3 weeks we formed somewhat of a base at 1900. Are you thinking in your mind? Are you thinking, if is there a level that you have that you would accumulate more, that you would take that profit that you've made, or that hedge money, so to speak, and put it back into ETH? Are you doing it, I guess, dollar cost averaging, so to speak, or are you doing it, you have a target price and you want to say, you know what, this is the floor I think it is? You don't have to tell us what it is, but are you saying that there is a price where you are just going to come in hard? And again, you don't have to share that with us.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share with what I'm looking at right now. I actually have I've covered some of my shorts in ETH because I'm looking at this area back here. Those of you that follow ETH really closely, if you remember going back almost a year now, we had this time where it's not showing the data back from there, but we had come from a high, broke back down, and then we had this massive rally all the way back up to 46, 47, 4,800 here. And this area to me is very important. As you can see right now, we are testing that area. So when I look at this area in ETH, I say two things are going to happen for me in the very near future. Either if we start to fail there, I will actually start to sell some of my spot ETH, because this is such a huge area that I will actually trim my position and actually wait to see what happens. So if they start to break out through here and we see accelerate to the downside, really below this, let's just call it this 16 to 1800 area. Okay. If it starts to take out these lows, I will not even be going to the futures in this particular instance. I'll be actually trimming my spot position. If we start to get back above here, this is where I start to look at the trader in me and say, look, I'll either go to the bigger ETH contract, maybe buy some futures, because I won't be certain that low will hold, or we will start to rally. Here's a time where I might even start using them as longs, because I want to be really nimble in getting out of, and I don't want to pay the high cost of using the spot. So this area becomes very important to me, because if it fails to hold here, I'm trimming some of my ETH, and I will start to use the futures. And if I make money on the futures, I can always buy the spot ETH. I look at it once again as I'll use the futures money to be able to purchase more ETH. Now, if ETH starts to accelerate down below here, I don't have an area that I will be looking initially to buy. I don't even know that we can't go back to 1,000 potentially in ETH or even lower. A lot of people will talk about crypto corrections will be 85%. That's like a normal correction for Bitcoin, and a lot of cryptos they'll correct up to 85%. I will look at that. I don't know what that exact number is off the top of my head right now from the highs. I would assume it's not too much further from here, and watch kind of how that sets up, and maybe layer some other technicals. But I think this area is very critical, and I think this is where it starts becoming very interesting to me to say, this is why I don't even want to be short the futures here anymore, because I'm like, I think the bounce could be vicious, or if it fails to hold here, I'm trimming some of my spot anyway. It won't be enough just to be short futures. I will actually be exiting some of ETH and waiting to see if there's another opportunity.
Right. Interesting. Okay. I think, this has been a wonderful half hour. It goes way too quick. This is the kind of thing I think we could be spending a little more time on. I certainly could be talking about it. I'm a technicals guy. I'm a chartered market technician. Anthony, you probably are a chartered market technician de facto just by your years on the floor, right? And looking at charts, your screen time probably qualifies you for that. Before we end this segment, I'd like to, let you just tell everybody how they can contact you.
Hey, everybody. First of all, it was great to be here. And remember, futures markets, they could be used to hedge, they could be used to trade. And the benefits of futures are beyond just trading, right? And I showed you today, hopefully you learned something on how to potentially hedge your spot Ethereum or your NFTs. It's the only way that I have found to hedge those positions. You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Crudele. My DMs are open. I'm also on Instagram at Anthony C. Crudele. And go to anthonycrudele.com. I have a bunch of free stuff out there, weekly live streams on my podcast. I host Develop Your Edge each and every week. And you can see my NinjaTrader charting edges I do each and every week on YouTube. And like I said, I wish all of you traders out there all the best during these very busy markets. And Tom and Ninja, thank you so much for having me today.
Anthony, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to thank all the viewers for joining us as well. It's been a treat. Just want to remind you that our next episode will be next week at the same time at 10:30 on Thursday. And we'll continue the crypto discussion with Bitcoin. But for that, I want to again thank Anthony for joining, and have a great trading day.